Welcome to Story Medicine. I'm Joe Summerfield. For over 20 years, I've been working to better understand and support people in navigating this human experience, and I've come to believe that stories are encoded with the collective wisdom of all who have come before us, that they bring us into connection with the collective unconscious and contain treasure waiting to be decoded. This podcast explores traditional tales through that lens. Each episode offers a story told in full, an exploration of the medicine it carries, and practices to help you integrate that medicine. Today's story comes from Inuit tradition, told across the Arctic from Greenland to Alaska to Canada, with regional variations that reflect each community's relationship with the sea and its creatures. In Baffin Island, she's called Sedna. Among the Netsilik people, Nuliajuk. The Polar Inuit know her as Nerivik. And in Greenland, Anakwagsak. And though her names change, the medicine remains. This is the story of how a young woman became the mother of all sea creatures, the keeper of the deep, and the one whose pain and release determine whether the people will eat or starve. This is a living tradition, held sacred by Inuit communities today, so I share it with a deep respect to those who continue to honor this story. Let's begin. Part 1. The Story. There was once a young woman who lived with her father near the sea. In some tellings her name was Sedna from the beginning. In others she had no name yet. She would only receive her true name after what was to come. She was beautiful, this young woman. Many hunters came seeking her hand in marriage. They brought extravagant gifts. They spoke of their skill with the harpoon, their knowledge of ice and the weather, and their ability to provide. But she rejected all of them. Different versions tell this differently. Perhaps she was proud and preferred to remain alone. Perhaps she was content in her father's house, comfortable with plenty of food and warm furs, and saw no reason to change her life. Perhaps she didn't want to leave her father. The tellings don't entirely agree on her reasons, but they all converge on what happened next. One day, a hunter arrived who was different from the rest. He came across the water in a fine kayak dressed in rich furs. His voice was smooth and certain. He spoke to Sedna's father of a land across the water where food was plentiful, where she would want for nothing, and where she would be honored and cared for every day. He promised abundance for the daughter. And the father, weary of his daughter's refusals, gave his consent. The choice had been made. Sedna had her misgivings. Something about the hunter unsettled her. Perhaps his eyes, which she couldn't quite see behind the shade of his hood. Perhaps the way he stood too still, like something waiting. But the bargain had been sealed. The hunter helped Sedna into his kayak, and they set off across the water. They paddled for some time, farther than Sedna had ever travelled from her home before. And finally they came to a desolate island of rock and sparse grass, battered by the wind. "This is your new home," the hunter said, and as he spoke he removed his hood. Where his face should have been, Sedna saw the sharp beak and dark eyes of a bird, a fulmar, a petrel, a creature that feeds on the dead and follows storms. He had deceived them. He was not a man at all. He was a spirit bird in disguise. Sedna's new life was harsh beyond measure. The spirit bird's nest was perched high on the cliff face, exposed to every wind. There was no warm house, no caribou hide for bedding. The spirit brought her fish, always fish, raw and cold, for he could hunt nothing else on wing. She was cold, hungry, and isolated on this barren rock, whilst storms shrieked around her. She had been promised abundance, and she had been given desolation. Time passed, days that felt like seasons, and Sedna grew thin. She called out across the water, hoping that somebody might hear, but the island was so far from any hunting ground, and the winds carried her voice away. In some tellings, she spent her days remembering all of the suitors who she had rejected with her proud heart, wishing that she could return to the comfort that she had taken for granted. Then, one day, she saw a kayak in the distance, and her heart leapt. It was her father, coming to visit, as families do. When he climbed up into the nest and saw how his daughter had been living, he saw the cold, the hunger, the deception. His rage ignited. "You lied," he said to the spirit bird. "You promised her abundance, and you gave her suffering." Later that day, whilst the bird spirit was away hunting, the father helped Sedna down from the cliff and into his kayak. "Come, we're going home," he said. "I should never have let him take you." They paddled across the water, putting distance between themselves and the island. But soon enough, the bird spirit returned to his nest to find it empty. As he searched, he saw them on the water, fleeing. In this moment, the bird spirit made a full transformation. He summoned his flock, birds of storm and fury, and the sky grew dark with feathers and rage as they took to the air. They flew above the kayak and beat their wings with such force that the sea itself rose up in answer. The waves crashed all across the small boat, and wind tore at the paddles. Sedna's father looked at the towering waves, and at the birds screaming overhead, and at the water that was filling his kayak, and fear seized him. This was a storm that would kill them both, and so he made a choice. He grabbed his daughter, Sedna, and threw her over the side of the kayak. Sedna surfaced, gasping, the cold water a shock through her body. She reached for the kayak, her fingers finding purchase on the slippery side. "Father!" she cried. "Help me!" But her father saw the birds circling and the waves still rising, and he thought, "If I save her, the storm will kill us both. If I sacrifice her, perhaps I will survive." So he took his knife and brought it down on Sedna's fingers, where they gripped the kayak. The first joint fell away, the fingertips dropped into the water, and as they sank, they transformed, becoming ringed seals that dove into the depths. Sedna's hands, now bleeding, found new purchase on the kayak. She held with what remained. "Father, please!" He struck again with his knife, and the second joints fell, and these became bearded seals, larger and darker, swimming down into the cold. And still she held on. She tried to pull herself back on board the boat. With what was left of her hands, just the stumps of her palms, she clung to the kayak's edge. And her father struck with the knife one final time. The rest of her fingers, her palms, fell away. And these, as they dropped into the water, became walrus, massive and tusked, and whales, bowhead and belugas and narwhals, with their spiraled horns. All of the creatures of the sea that would sustain the people came from what was cut away. And Sedna, with no hands left to hold on, sank deep beneath the waves. Sedna did not die, at least not in the way that mortals die. She sank down, down, down through the dark water until she reached the bottom of the sea, and there she stayed. Her father's fate is told differently across tellings. In one version, such shame consumed him that he went searching for her, calling her name across the water, until he, too, was pulled beneath the waves, where he became Sedna's servant, forever tending the seals at her command. In another telling, he lived on as an old man, carrying his choice like a stone in his chest until his last breath. The stories disagree on his fate, but about Sedna, they are certain. She sits at the bottom of the ocean in a great house made of whale ribs and stone. Her hair, long, thick, and as black as night, grows tangled because she has no fingers to comb it. The spirits of the dead come to her realm, Ad Livun, the place beneath the waves. And all of the creatures of the sea, the seals, the walrus, the whales that came from her severed fingers, those are hers to command. When the Inuit people break sacred laws, when they hunt without proper respect, when they fail to give fresh water to the killed seal, when they mix sea and land animals in cooking, when they waste what the animals give, Sedna feels it. The transgressions tangle in her hair like seaweed, like dirt, making it wild and knotted and painful. In her discomfort and pain, she holds the sea creatures close, refusing to release them. And the hunters catch nothing, and the people begin to starve. When this happens, the Angakuk, the shaman, must make a journey. They enter a trance, a state between worlds, and dive down through the dark water. They swim past the spirits of the dead, past creatures both wondrous and terrible, down to Sedna's house at the bottom of the sea. And there they find her, sitting in pain, her hair a wild storm around her, the sea creatures hidden away in the tangles. And the shaman does not argue with her. He doesn't tell her she's wrong to withhold the animals. He doesn't plead with her. Instead, they approach with gentleness, with devotion. They take her tangled hair in their hands and they begin to comb it, slowly, carefully, with tenderness, working out every knot, every piece of dirt, every transgression caught in the strands. And they speak softly to her. They acknowledge her pain. They witness what was done to her. And as her hair becomes smooth again, as the tangles release, Sedna's response softens. Her pain is seen, tended, soothed. And from this tending, she releases the sea creatures back to the hunters. The seals surface, the walrus return, and the whales breach. And the people survive. But they know this medicine must be given again and again. The people will transgress again. Sedna's hair will tangle again, and the shaman will descend again. This is the rhythm of relationship with the sea, with the sacred, and with Sedna herself, the mother of all sea creatures, the keeper of the deep, whose pain and release determine whether we feast or starve. Part 2. The medicine. Let's explore the medicine that this story offers. Before we go deeper, if you know anybody who might appreciate this story's medicine right now, please share the episode with them. And if you are enjoying the podcast and would like to help others find it too, please consider subscribing and leaving a review. Thank you. This story comes from a culture where survival depends entirely on what the sea provides, where respect for the animals that give their lives is not abstract ethics but life or death necessity. Those waters are the home of nourishment. And Sedna is not ancient mythology, she's a living presence in Inuit spiritual life. The shamanic journeys to comb her hair, the sacred laws that maintain right relationship, the understanding that human transgression affects the natural world. These aren't just old notions, they are ongoing practice. So I approach this respectfully as an outsider to the tradition that holds it sacred. But I believe that there is medicine here that speaks across cultures, about the issue of self-determination, about necessary descent, and about how devoted tending restores flow when pain has tangled a system. Let's go through it. Sedna is beautiful and desired, but rejects all suitors. Different versions give different reasons: pride, contentment, devotion to her father, but the pattern is clear. She chooses to remain in the comfort of her father's house. We might see this as an empowered position, remaining aloof, turning away suitors. But I think one thing this story illustrates is how pride and aloofness actually undermines authenticity and self-determination. It looks like power, refusing to engage, but it's not. It's avoiding active participation in life's evolution, which then takes our evolution out of our own hands. We could say that she's stuck in what Jung would call the maiden archetype, young, single, not responsible for anything beyond herself. And whilst she stays there, refusing the transition that's calling, represented by the incoming suitors, she becomes more subject to external forces, not less. Her non-participation doesn't protect her, it makes her vulnerable to others' choices and to circumstances. This seems particularly pertinent for us in these times, where we are more used than ever to having what we want when we want it, and when there is so much emphasis on individual immediate satisfaction. Many of us see self-gratification and keeping ourselves above the messy work of maturation as empowerment, but it could actually just as well be a false safety that leaves us at the mercy of forces outside of ourselves. And notice, eventually, through this hard journey, she does progress from maiden. She becomes the mother of all sea creatures. But she can only reach this authentic power through forced descent. Her father seals her fate twice. First, he chooses the bird spirit for her, either because he's weary of her refusals, or tempted by the offer of fish, or perhaps genuinely deceived. It's not clear. His choice, which is made necessary by the absence of her participation, delivers her into isolation and suffering. Then, when he discovers his error and attempts to rescue, his courage collapses in the moment that supernatural forces threaten his own survival, and so he throws her overboard. And when she clings to the kayak, refusing to sink, he cuts away her capacity to hold on, and this is devastating. The one who should protect her becomes the instrument of her destruction. And yet, this is complex medicine. Perhaps he's also serving forces larger than himself. First, her non-participation in maturation left him to make the decision for her. It wasn't truly his to make. And second, the supernatural form genuinely does threaten to kill them both. He is acting from terror, yes, and he's failing her, yes. But he is also unknowingly serving the necessity of her journey. Because what would have happened if he had successfully rescued her and taken her home? She'd return to her comfortable pride and aloofness. She would never find authentic power at the bottom of the sea. She would never evolve. So perhaps her father fails her and serves fate. His betrayal wounds her and pushes her toward her authentic becoming. This doesn't excuse his actions, but it does show how sometimes fate ensures that we make the journeys that we're avoiding, even if it requires devastating circumstances to bring it about. As Sedna's fingers are cut away, first joints, second joints, palms, they don't disappear, they transform. The smallest pieces become ringed seals, the middle joints become bearded seals, the deepest cuts and the palms themselves become walrus and whales, the massive creatures that sustain entire communities. There's surely medicine in the fingers themselves. They represent perhaps our capacity to hold on to order that feels like safety. Sedna clings to the kayak, to the familiar, to what she knows, to her existing way of being. She won't let go. She can't let go voluntarily. So the fingers must be cut away. The grip must be released, and this is painful. This is violent. This is the necessity of surrender, but it's brutal, and in this case, not voluntary. Sometimes we won't surrender until there are no fingers left to hold on with. What falls away transforms into life itself. Notice the progression. The deeper the cut, the more profound what emerges. Surface wounds create surface sustenance, but the deepest cuts, the palms, the foundation, these become the whales, the walrus. Perhaps the medicine here is that when we are forced to release our grip on false safety, when what we've been clinging to is cut away, those severed pieces don't disappear. They enter the world and become something sustaining. Not because violence was good, but because nothing is wasted. Everything is transformed. Sedna sinks down, down, down through the dark water, surrendering to the depth, allowing complete dissolution. Water represents emotion and the unconscious. You cannot tend pain from the surface. You cannot restore flow whilst staying above the waters. You must descend to where the pain lives, into the unconscious realms of the psyche, into the grief, into the pain, and the terror that you've been avoiding. So Sedna reaches the bottom. And there, in the place beneath everything, she becomes something entirely new. She is transformed. No longer the proud, aloof maiden, not the comfortable daughter, but a goddess, the keeper of creatures, the one whose pain and release ripple through entire systems. And here is medicine that we don't often encounter in stories of gods and goddesses. Sedna is both immensely powerful and sensitive and in need. She commands all of the creatures of the sea. She determines whether entire communities are nourished, so she sits at the foundation of survival itself. And she feels every transgression deeply, every act of disrespect, every waste, every broken sacred law tangles in her hair, causing her pain. And she needs care. Think about the gods we usually encounter. Zeus hurling thunderbolts from high, untouched by mortal concerns. Powerful deities who are distant and invulnerable, impervious to pain, and who respond to transgressions with wrath. Sedna is sensitive to every transgression, and that sensitivity doesn't diminish her power. It's how she knows when the system is out of balance. And this is different medicine. This is a goddess who's tender, vulnerable and responsive, who requires care, who withholds not from spite but from pain, who releases not from force but from being tended with devotion. Perhaps there is medicine here, that we don't have to transcend our wounds to be powerful. You don't have to become invulnerable to be strong. Power, sensitivity, and receptivity coexist. Being witnessed in your pain doesn't make you weak, it makes you real. My feeling is that everything exists as part of an ecology, and they nest into each other. Sedna is her own ecology. When she experiences pain, the effects ripple into the next layer of ecology, by way of her hair becoming knotted. This disrupts the ecology that she is a part of, the depths around her and the creatures of the sea. And when that happens, the entire system stops flowing, and the next layer, the surface level and humans, starve. I think most of us carry an aversion to pain and grief, and few of us are taught how to hold or process it. But our lives are profoundly controlled by these forces, the strategies that we develop to avoid it, the ways that untended pain plays out in our relationships, our work, our capacity to receive and to give, the denial that we live with. The medicine here is perhaps this. Untended pain disrupts our internal ecology first. It tangles, like Sedna's hair, creating knots that prevent flow. And this internal disruption ripples outwards into the other ecologies that we're a part of, our relationships, our creativity, our professional lives, our communities, all of the systems that we participate in. So your unprocessed pain or fear doesn't go away. Your untended grief doesn't stay contained. These things that we don't allow to be witnessed don't remain private. Things tangle in your system, obstructing your flow, and that's expressed widely. We are all caged by the pain that we don't face. And face it we must, if we don't want to be controlled by the ways it manifests when we leave it unintegrated. And this brings us to the medicine of tending. When the people starve, when the flow of nourishment is disrupted, the shaman, the one with the connection, must descend. They must enter the trance state, and they must swim down through the realm of death and danger. And they approach Sedna with devotion, with tenderness, with gentleness. They comb her hair, slowly, carefully, working out every tangle. She is in need of their care. She has no fingers. And they witness her pain. They acknowledge what was done to her, and they offer the care that she cannot give herself. This isn't bargaining or appeasement. This isn't force. This is devoted tending. And from this tending, from this quality of compassionate presence, Sedna releases the animals. Not because she's defeated and not because she's convinced, but because her pain has been witnessed, her tangles have been soothed, and flow can return. So perhaps the medicine here is that abundance is always there. The creatures exist. The capacity for life exists. But untended pain creates webs that bind the flow. Devotional tending, presence, tenderness, patience, the willingness to descend into the dark water and sit with what's been hurt. This is what unknots the system. You cannot restore flow by demanding it. You cannot make abundance appear by force. You must descend. You must comb the tangles with gentleness. And this must be done again and again. Sedna's hair will tangle again. The shaman will descend again. And this isn't failure. This is the rhythm of existence. Repair is not a one-time fix. Tending is not something that you do once and then you're done. This is the work that never finishes. Descending to where pain lives, offering care, restoring flow, and knowing that you'll need to descend again. Sedna still sits at the bottom of the sea. Her hair is still growing tangled, and the shaman are still descending. This is not a story that ends. This is a story that we are living. Part 3. Integration Practices. The medicine doesn't come from understanding these patterns intellectually. It comes from the practices, from allowing the transformation to happen in your body and in your honest acknowledgement of where you are. Here are 3 practices to help you integrate some of this story's medicine. First practice, the illusion of your power. Sedna appeared empowered in her refusals, her comfort, her pride. But this aloofness actually undermined her authenticity and kept her from active participation in her own evolution. Take 30 minutes with your journal and write about where and in what ways you're appearing powerful, where you're refusing, where you're staying comfortable, where you're remaining aloof, but actually avoiding active participation in your life's evolution. Where does your pride keep you from the evolution that's calling? What transition are you resisting? Are you stuck in a comfortable identity that you've outgrown? Are you refusing to engage with what feels messy or uncertain or difficult? Be specific. Don't write about aloofness in general. Write about your aloofness. Where are you like Sedna in her father's house, appearing empowered but actually not actively participating in your own becoming? And then ask, what would I have to surrender if I engaged fully? What comfort would I lose? What false safety would I have to release? And what fears would I need to face? Write honestly. The medicine here isn't in staying comfortable, it's in recognizing when comfort has become a cage. Second practice, releasing the grip. Sedna clung on to the kayak with her fingers, her capacity to hold on to order that felt like safety. Her fingers had to be cut away before she could descend to where her authentic power waited. So this practice asks, where are you holding on to what feels like safety but is actually preventing your transformation? Identify your fingers on the kayak, the control, the familiar patterns, the order that you're clinging on to, even though it's not serving you anymore. Maybe it's an identity that you've outgrown. Maybe it's the way that you've always done things. Maybe it's the image of yourself that you're trying to maintain. Maybe it's some aspect of a relationship. Now make this embodied, not just mental. Find an object, a stone, a ball, something that you can grip tightly, and hold it in your hands. Close your eyes and infuse that object with the thing that you're clinging onto, and then squeeze it as hard as you can. Feel the strain in your fingers, in your palms, in your forearms. Hold it until your hands are shaking. This is what the holding on feels like. This is the effort that you're putting into maintaining your grip on this thing. Now practice releasing, slowly, consciously, each finger opening. Feel the object falling away, and notice the relief in your hands when they're finally empty. Notice the change in your body, in your chest, in your abdomen, in your shoulders. And as you release, name what you're letting go of, saying it out loud. For example, I am releasing my grip on whatever it is you're holding on to. And then ask, if this fell away, if this was cut from my hands, what might it transform into? What new life might grow from the severed pieces? And don't rush to answers. Just notice what wants to fall away and what might grow from it. Third practice, combing your own tangles. Sedna cannot comb her own hair. Her fingers are gone. She needs others to descend and tend to her tangles with devotion. But first, can we begin by offering this tenderness to ourselves? This practice asks, what tangles your hair? What pain, what grief, what untended wound has accumulated, creating knots that stop the flow in your life? Find a quiet place. If you like, you can literally comb or brush your hair while you do this practice, or give yourself a foot rub or a hand rub. Make it embodied if you like. Make it physical, real. And as you do that, feel for the knots. As you find one, pause and work it gently. And as you work each knot, ask yourself, what does this knot represent? What pain have I left unattended? What grief have I been avoiding? Name each knot as you work it out. Say it aloud or silently. This is my grief about something. This is my pain from something. This is what I've been carrying. This is offering yourself the care that Sedna needs from the shaman. And when you finish, ask, What am I ready to let flow now? What capacity has been bound up that's ready to surface again? What am I ready to release back into my life? And remember, this is an ongoing practice. This isn't one-off work. The medicine is in making this a practice, not an event. And the next layer may be to start showing these parts of yourself to others, to your partner, to a dear friend. Sedna is forced by necessity to allow others to witness and tend to her. The medicine in this story asks much of us. It asks us to see through the illusion of our aloofness. It asks us to release our grip on false safety. It asks us to descend into the dark water and to tend the pain that tangles our systems. It doesn't promise that the transformation will be comfortable. It doesn't say that the descent will be chosen. But it does show this. At the bottom, authentic power awaits. In the deep, you become the one who determines flow. When pain is tended with devotion, abundance returns, and what falls away transforms into life. Sedna is still at the bottom of the sea. The shaman are still descending, and the hair is still being combed. And you may find those who will descend to tend to your tangles, and you may have the courage to descend for others. The wisdom in these stories waits patiently. I hope this one's medicine found you where you need it. Thank you for listening to Story Medicine. I am Joe Summerfield. Until next time.